We're in Lent. We're going through the book of Ruth, a Lenten journey, we're calling it. And if you're not familiar with the church or, traditions of the church, and actually, even if you've been in this church for a long time, you may not know much about Lent. It's a season in the church calendar, the 40 days leading up to Easter. And again, if you know the biblical story or you know a little bit about Jesus, Old Testament even, you know that the number 40 is important. It's really symbolic. The Israelites spent 40 years in the wilderness. Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness before his ministry. And so, centuries ago, the church thought, hey, 40 days before Easter, let's make this a special time in the year and use it as preparation. And so we decided in this church we're going to do that as well, our own version of that. And so you may have, some of you may have grown up in a very Lenten church, like, man, this is how you do it. Everybody fasts from this, and this is the day of the week that you do this and that. That's not us. We're pretty loosey-goosey when it comes to tradition. But we decided that we're going to encourage that for folks. So for me, I watched Caleb's video a few weeks ago. If you haven't watched it, you can watch it on our YouTube channel. Caleb's one of our leaders here, and he did a really, really cool, really well done video and introduced Lent and said, here's my Lenten practice, and he shared that last week. And do you guys remember what it was? Not speeding. Okay, good. So he decided that God was saying, hey, for 40 days, this is something in your life that's going to make a difference. Like, I want you to not speed as you drive. You're going to go drive the speed limit for 40 days. I know. And so that was just something for him. And so he encouraged us to be praying and thinking about that. And so I listened to that, and this is not a joke. I mean, it kind of is, but it sounds like a joke. I guess it's kind of a joke, but I'm actually doing it. I listened to this, and I'm like, driving the speed limit. Lord, you want me to do that? I'm just kind of considering. And I'm like, I can't do that. That's so stupid. I'm not kidding. This is exactly how it went. And I'm having this conversation with God, and I'm like, that's just so dumb. I hate it when people drive the speed limit. It drives me crazy. And I'm like judging them. I'm like, I hate it when people, and the Lord's like, he's just like, there's your practice, Chris. You are not going to judge people who drive the speed limit. I'm not kidding. That's my practice. And I'm thinking about it, and I thank you, Caleb, very much, because that's the thing for me, is I'm super judgy when it comes to driving. And that's a thing for me. And so it's kind of funny, but it isn't. It's hard. Don't ask me how it's going. I'm trying. But I remember that it's Lent every time someone's driving the speed limit in front of me, which is great, which is the point of the whole thing. So I encourage you to do that. We're going to talk about a great story today. We're continuing in the book of Ruth. I think that means on. This is me not preparing. There we go. Okay, some of you know the Lord of the Rings, and I hesitated to put all of these words on the screen because, a bunch of words. Who wants to read a bunch of words? So don't feel like you have to read all of these words. I'm going to read them for us, if I can see them. This is a point in the story of the Lord of the Rings where they are desperate. They don't want to continue on. This is Samwise Gamgee. He's with Frodo, and this is the quote in the movie. It's like the great stories, Mr. Frodo. I really want to do the Irish accent, or whatever the accent was. It wasn't really Irish, but it was like fake Irish. The ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were, and sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come. And when the sun shines, it will shine out the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you, that meant something. Even if you were too small to understand why, but I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now. Folk in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, only they didn't. They kept going because they were holding on to something. That there's some good in this world, Mr. Frodo, and it's worth fighting for. The stories that really mattered. Ruth and Naomi have a story that really matters. It's one of these stories. There's darkness. They had every chance of giving up. But God met them right where they were. And that's what we're going to think about and talk about today. Okay, you have a parchment in front of you, kids. This is for the kids first. The parents, you'll get your, and adults, you'll get your instructions later. But kids, adults, you can help them with this. So while I'm talking, totally fine. While I'm talking, while we're singing, this is a scroll that is a story of your life. Your life. That's right. Your life. All the years that you've been on the earth, a sentient being, you can just draw stories of maybe something that you like to do, or maybe you can draw where you live. Maybe you can draw people in your life. Sorry. People in your life. Those kinds of things. Adults, you can help them with that. And of course, adults, if you end up doing this as well while I'm talking, I won't know the difference. So just go right ahead. But we'll get to our instructions in a few minutes. That's our story scroll. The great stories are great because they start seemingly in an impossible situation, and spoiler alert, they actually, win the battle. This is the end of the story. This is the four hobbits together. They go from there to there, right? Just to say it really quickly, like you get that, right? There's a starting and then there's an ending, and the great stories are what's in between. Like how are they going to go from there to there? I just can't see how it's going to happen, you might say. In a movie, like the first scene is setting up the characters and the context and the situation, and it's like they're in this helpless, hopeless situation, and they have no way of getting out, and they can't figure it out, and they're just desperate, and then you know that they're going to win in the end, or they're going to get out, or like they're going to rise from the ashes. You know this, and you're thinking to yourself, well, this is going to be a good story. This is going to be good. That's great stories. That's what they're talking about. And in The Lord of the Rings, you know that they had this really long journey, and they had to do it on barefoot, apparently, and that'd be the hardest part of acting. You know what I mean? Like they had to walk on the rocks barefoot. But it was worse than that. If you've seen the movies, there were spiders and such, and they had to take the ring to Mordor. Great story. Great story. But you see, it's the in-between where God writes the story. So that's what we want to look at today. Today I called it Not by Chance. This is Ruth chapter 2. The story takes a turn. If you know the story of Ruth or where they are in their story arc, chapter 1, we heard the last couple of weeks that set the context. This was scene 1 in the book of Ruth. And this is where they are, kind of symbolically, right? That's not Ruth and Naomi. It's not a picture, right? They didn't have movies back then, a few years ago. But this is symbolically where they are. Ruth and Naomi are both, they are both widows. Naomi's husband passed away. Her son married Ruth, and he passed away, and so they're both widows. And Ruth is a foreigner from Moab, and they come back to Bethlehem. You've probably heard of the town of Bethlehem. They come back to Bethlehem because that's where Naomi lived with her husband before they moved away because of a famine. This is all the last couple weeks. And so the situation basically is they are widows in a patriarchal society. They have no jobs. They have no prospects. They have no money. They have no food. They have no one to take care of them because in those days, being taken care of meant you had to have family members, and usually it was a wealthy landowner man. They're desperate. So that's where we pick up the story. She even wanted to change her name. Do you guys remember Naomi? She comes back home, and then she's like, I'm so angry. Not the word. I'm so angry. I don't want you to call me Naomi anymore. I want you to call me, anybody remember? Bitter. Nice. bitter, right? And so my voice will eventually warm up. I'm doing an audiobook, just as an aside, and my voice is really tired from doing the audiobook, and so my apologies. It's a little deep. I'll do this. Bitter. So she's just bitter at God. You ever been bitter at God? You ever been in that place where, God, where are you? What are you doing? Like I know you love me, or I think you love me, and I think you're here. Man, what's the next step? What do we do? I can't see the way forward, you know? That's where they are. Ruth chapter 2, here we go. And Ruth the Moabite, foreigner, she wasn't an Israelite, in other words. Israelites were the people of God, right? Old Testament, Red Sea, all of that, Israelites. She was a Moabite, said to Naomi, her mother-in-law, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain, behind someone in whose sight I may find favor." Naomi said to her, "Go, my daughter." So she went. She came and gleaned in the field behind the reapers. I'm going to put the screen up. Spoiler alert. Jesus rises from the dead, okay? That's the end. You're going to hear the next few weeks. That's the end of this story. How do you get from desperation to Jesus rising from the dead? Here we go. Okay, sorry about that. So she went, she came and gleaned in the field behind the reapers. As it happened, she came to the part of the field belonging to Boaz. Oh, a new character in our story. Just then, Boaz came from Bethlehem. And let me just pause right there. If you know anything about reaping and sowing, you know, this is the sowing and reaping. This isn't like the reapers in like Harry Potter or whatever. Isn't that the same word? Reapers? I was thinking about that and I forgot to confirm. Okay. So this is like you sow in the field, the grain comes up, you know, you're taking care of your field. In this case, it's barley or wheat. You can kind of see like the grain right in the field, and there are people who harvest the field. They're the reapers. And so the reapers, who are the servants or family members of the owner of the field, go into the field and they reap the harvest, and they pick the grain and they bind the grain into like, you know, bunches, sheaves, you know? And you can picture this, right? Nice gold pictures of bunches of grain. And in those days, you could also, you were allowed to glean from the field as well. And so gleaners were not reapers, right? Gleaners were those who would walk behind the reapers. And you can imagine, right? You've seen barley or wheat. When they would pick the grain out of, and they would stack it and wrap it, some of the grain would fall on the ground, right? Or they would pick up a bunch and one or two would fall on the ground. Well, that's what the gleaners got. They got the scraps. And so when you were gleaning, you were just hoping to walk behind someone who may or may not have really good hand-eye coordination, and you would just pick up the scraps into your basket, hoping that you picked up enough to feed yourself and your family, if you had a family, when you went back home. And so that's what Ruth did. Let me go glean. I'll pick up the scraps. We'll survive for another day. I'll come back tomorrow. That was their plan. Boaz shows up. Boaz says, excuse me, as it happened, she came to the part of the field belonging to Boaz. Boaz is the field owner. Just then, Boaz came from Bethlehem. Just then, it happened to be. He said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." They answered, "The Lord bless you." And this is in the scripture just to tell us that he was a God-fearing man. That's how he greeted his servants, was "The Lord be with you." And so here's somebody who's an Israelite. He knows the law. He's a God-fearing man. He blesses other people. Bless you. Perfect timing. Then Boaz said to his servant who was in charge of the reapers, to whom was in charge of the reapers, to whom does this young woman belong? Get the language? To whom does this young woman belong? The servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, well, she is a Moabite. She is not one of us, which is okay, we'll see. She is the Moabite who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. She said, please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the reapers. So she came, and she has been on her feet from early this morning until now without resting for a moment. Respect. Right? She's a hard worker. She hasn't eaten anything. She doesn't have food with her. She doesn't have drink with her. She has nothing. But she's working very hard. Then Boaz said to Ruth, story takes a turn. Who knows what the landowner's going to do or say? Boaz goes and talks to Ruth. Now listen, my daughter. Do not go to glean in another field or leave this one, but keep close to my young women. Is he being selfish? Keep your eyes on the field that is being reaped and follow behind them. I have ordered the young men not to bother you. Oh. You can imagine foreign young women, vulnerable in a field. Young men bother them. And he's saying, you will not be bothered. I have ordered the young men not to bother you. Stay at my field. He's protecting her. Okay. I've ordered the young men not to bother you. If you get thirsty, reminder, go to the vessels and drink from what the young men have drawn. You get to share in what the young men, my servants, my workers. So then, of course, we learned that Ruth is sort of a new believer. She is someone who has just started to follow God through knowledge of the Israelite God through her mother-in-law, Naomi. And so she's just kind of a new believer. She knows the laws, but so here's her response. Then she fell prostrate with her face to the ground. She's overwhelmed with gratitude and humility, and said to him, why have I found favor in your sight that you should take notice of me when I am a foreigner? But Boaz answered her, all that you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband has been fully told to me, and how you left your father and mother and your native land and came to a people that you did not know before. May the Lord reward you for your deeds, and may you have a full reward from the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come for refuge. Then she said, may I continue to find favor in your sight, my Lord, for you have comforted me and spoken kindly to your servant, even though I am not one of your servants. It goes on. At mealtime, Boaz said to her, come here. She's over there. All of the servants are eating food over here. She has no rights. She's a foreigner. She's new. She is not part of the family or part of the household. At mealtime, Boaz said to her, come over here. Eat some of this bread and dip your morsel into the sour wine. You have access to everything that I give to my household. Wow. So she sat beside the reapers, and he heaped up for her some parched grain. She ate until she was satisfied, and she had some left over. When she got up to glean, Boaz instructed his young men. It goes on and on. Boaz instructed his young men, let her glean even among the standing sheaves, not just from the things that fall on the ground after the reapers. Let her glean from the standing sheaves. Do not reproach her. You must also pull out some handfuls for her from the bundles and leave them for her to glean, and do not rebuke her. Holy smokes, what is happening? What is happening? All we know is that Boaz is the owner of this field, and he sees Ruth, and he asks who she is, and I don't know, does he respect her? Is he like, wow, she's really hard worker? Is this like, what is happening? Over and over, like he didn't have to do these things. You know, the law said just let them glean. Like that was the law. That was what God asked the Israelites to do. Just let the people glean. And here he's like giving her the servants food, the servants wine, the servants water, his household's provisions, and more than she needs. What is going on here? It's a great story. It's a great story. And then just to finish up the chapter, so she gleaned in the field till evening. She beat out what she gleaned, and it was about an ephah of barley. She picked it up and came into town. So now she comes into town. Scene is coming to a close. And her mother-in-law saw how much she had gleaned. What do you think Naomi thought? I mean, because she knows, right, when you go to glean, she's gleaned. You know, she knows when you go to glean, it's like, I hope I have enough to make like one loaf of bread for 2 people. And she walks in with like this giant vat of like grain. What do you think? Here's what she thinks. It tells us. Then she took out and gave her what was left over, and she herself had been satisfied. Her mother-in-law said to her, "Where did you glean today? Where have you worked?" Okay, here it is. Ready? "Blessed be the man who took notice of you." She knows. You don't glean that much. Ain't no way you're going to glean that much. Something must have happened. And her response is, remember, Naomi's bitter at God. In this moment, she's thinking, God is blessing us. Okay, story's taking a turn. So she told her mother-in-law, with whom she had worked, and said, "The name of the man with whom I worked today is Boaz." And she's like, it's Boaz. It's this guy Boaz. I met him. You know, he's a worker. You know, he owns a field. Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "Blessed be he by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead." Naomi also said to her, "This man is a relative of ours." And in this translation it says, "and one of our nearest kin." Literally, in the original languages, this phrase is, "one with the right to redeem." What? Just let that sink in for a second. Just see what is happening. This man is a relative of ours, one with the right to redeem. We'll hear more about redemption in the next couple scenes. I'm not going to get into it right now, but that's the story of Ruth, redemption. It's a redemption story. And then Ruth reports, "He even said to me, 'Stay close by my servants until they have finished all the harvest.'" In other words, keep coming back. You have all you need for the entire harvest season. So she stayed close to the young women of Boaz, gleaning until the end of the barley and wheat harvests, by the way, another field, and she lived with her mother-in-law. End of scene. Man. Desperate. Hopeless. We've got Ruth. We've got Boaz. Here are just a couple ways to reflect on this story. Not the only ways, but a couple ways we could reflect. For Ruth, what do you do when you're in the dark? You know, figuratively speaking. When your life is just, it feels like, where is it going? Or you're in a situation that maybe you feel trapped or helpless or hopeless, or where is God in this? Or you're like, I don't know. You know, kids, you're in school all the time. You're like, I'm not sure how to do this thing. You know? Your parents are the same way at work sometimes, or in relationships. Like, I'm not sure how this is going to work out. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. I don't know where God is in this. That's where they were. And this is what Ruth did. And so here's one way we can think about this story. Just take your next faithful step. Ruth was like, understand this. Ruth and Naomi, when they came back to Bethlehem, they didn't sit down in their hut and lay out a life plan. You know what I'm saying? Like, they didn't say like, okay, in 5 years, we want to be here. Here's where we are, step 1, step 2, step 3. Here's what they actually did. I guess I can go glean. Let's go do that. Okay, go glean. Go do that. That was it. That's all I'll say about that. We'll come back to that. For Boaz, here's a way to reflect on this. He was living God's script. He was an Israelite man, like the Old Testament, the walking through the Red Sea, the Promised Land, the Ten Commandments, the Moses. That was his history. He was born into this. He was an Israelite man, and he was a God-fearing man. And if you know your Old Testament story, you know that the Israelites were the people that God chose to bless the world through them. And so he gave them the law. He gave them the Ten Commandments and all of these laws so that if they lived them out, if they lived the script, the world would see God through them. And people would be blessed. And so here was this Israelite man living the script. In particular, he was living the love God and love others, your neighbor. And if you remember in the New Testament when somebody questioned Jesus, well, who really is my neighbor, Do I have to love everybody? That's just the way that I think of that story. That's not how he actually said it. Jesus' response was, well, it's pretty much anybody you just kind of come across who's in need. It's pretty much anybody. It's not like it's not like who you're living next to necessarily. It's not like, who your friends are. It's not that. It's just whoever God puts in your path who's in need. That's your neighbor. And when you love them, you're living the script. And so here we have Boaz. This is just how he lived his life. When there were foreigners, he loved them. When there were people in need, he gave to them. He was generous. He was living the script. And so that's a way to reflect as well. How are we living the script? And if we don't know the script, if you don't know the Bible or story of God, that's where you start. That's your next faithful step. Read about Jesus. Pray a little bit. Talk to somebody who knows a little more than you. Live the script. Take your next faithful step. And here's the other thing. None of this would have mattered without God's pre-kindness. Ruth could have gleaned from the field hundreds, thousands of people. It was a tradition. The only way she knew, this is what I think, the way she knew that she could glean from the field is because for centuries, the Israelite fields were the fields where foreigners could glean from, right? So in a nomadic society, there were foreigners who would just kind of go from field to field, and they would try to survive, like I said. And the Israelite fields, the law that God had given them in the wilderness said, hey, look, you are going to be a people who leaves the edges of your field unharvested. I know you think it's yours. I know that you did all of the work. I know that this is you have invested and you sowed and you took care. I know that. But in the end, I want you to understand something. That's still my field. And I'm going to give you like almost all of it. But leave the edges. Because there are going to be people who, they don't know me. They're not part of the family of God. They're foreigners, just the language that they used then. And so I want you to leave that part. Just put it out there, Food pantry kind of thing. Soup kitchen. Just leave it out there for them. It's kind of God he is. And that's the pre-kindness that Ruth had no idea was going before her in that field. She had no idea that she was going to go to this field and not just gather grain. I really want to tell you the rest of the story. But I'm going to finish with this, and then I'm going to share a little bit. Charles Spurgeon, famous 19th century pastor and preacher, wrote this. He said, "It seemed nothing but an accidental happenstance, but how divinely was it planned. Ruth had gone forth with her mother-in-law's blessing under the care of her mother-in-law's God to humble but honorable toil, and the providence of God was guiding her every step. Little did she know that amid the sheaves she would find," okay, spoiler alert, you just have to come back to hear the whole story. "Little did she know that amid the sheaves she would find a husband, that he would make her joint owner of all of those broad acres, and that she, a poor foreigner, would become one of the progenitors of the great Messiah." Oh, the connection to Easter. God, he says this, God is very good to those who trust in him, and often surprises them with unlooked for blessings. Isn't that great? "Little do we know what may happen to us tomorrow, but this sweet fact may cheer us that no good thing shall be withheld. Chance is banished from the faith of Christians, for they see the hand of God in everything." So good. So that's the message for us, is to see the hand of God in your life and in your story. Now, we have some really good stories in this church of, people who have been some form of foreigner, helpless, hopeless, powerless. Maybe that was you at some point, and then where you are now. And you can see all of God's unlooked for blessings in the in-between. But we've got some particularly unique stories, and so I want to hear a little bit of one of those. And so Emmanuel's going to come up, right, Emmanuel? Are you going to come up? This is how we planned it. Hi, bud. Glad you showed up. It's really good. Glad to see you. Hold that. It's good to see you.
Thank you.
This is Emmanuel.
Hello.
He's the one we're sending down and supporting to go down to do ministry, and wrong guy. I really just said to Emmanuel, I said, "Emmanuel, here's what I'm talking about. You have this absolutely amazing story. We don't have time to hear the whole thing." Do you see the clock back there? I went way over. So we want to hear, here's what I want. Would you just share where you were as a kid? Helpless, hopeless, refugee. Just share a little bit of that scene. And then I just want you to share, what are some of the blessings that God showed to you to get you to where you are today? Just maybe one or two of those. Does that make sense? Yeah. Where did you start as a kid? Tell us a little bit about that scene.
Born from Congo. That's where I lived until I was 8. Then the war showed up, playing. Away to Rwanda. We lived there a couple of years. Then we head to Kenya. My dad was trying to take us as far as much to the enemy. Rwanda is very close to us. So we live in Kenya, refugee life. As he said, the time is short, but it's not a good one. And I couldn't knew that one day I will be testifying being a refugee in a good way. And as I read the Bible, I remember Jesus was a refugee. Then I feel strength. So when I was in Kenya, God bless my family to come here, and I was feeling in my heart, I will be praying for others. You're praying, that's how God touched my heart, thinking about kids who doesn't have way to go to school. Because when I was there, some kids, they was working under age of 18 because there's no way to go to school. That was kind of not good to see kids not finish even high school. So being here, being with you, talk with leaders, and also as faith, church needed to help. That's how it ended up starting ministry in Kenya of helping kids, at least 1 to 3 kids, they can go to school. And it's not even 1, it's 70 kids. They are able to do school and to finish high school. Blessings.
Good. So here, we're not done. You want to hear more of the story, right? I want to hear more of the story. That's okay, man. You're doing perfect. It's great. So the war came to where you grew up, and you grew up
Yes.
in?
It has been long, long ago. Even now it's going on.
Yeah. And so you grew up in the Congo, right?
Yeah.
Yep. And so the war came when you were a child. And do you remember, what do you remember? Just really, what do you remember of the war is coming, your dad has these kids, and he adopted other kids, and so you have this big family. You're literally, just set the scene. Did you were there buses going to Kenya, I guess Rwanda first, and how did you even get to Rwanda?
Okay, I will give example of fireworks. The way you just see someone do fireworks, that's how it comes. You
Fireworks.
just hear noise, and it's very bad, and it's scary, and everybody's running. So those kids my dad adopted, they ran away, and we ran away. We were lucky because we were still with parents, but they are separated from that time.
You use your hand. You just use your hands, bro. Just use your hands. I'll hold
And
it.
from that time, okay, we hide in daytime, and night we walk all the way to Rwanda, I can say. But it's not 1 week, it's maybe 1 month, walking, sleeping, hiding daytime, walking, hiding daytime, walking. Yeah.
And then you got to Rwanda, to a refugee camp.
Rwanda was not really refugee camp
Okay.
because the Rwanda was coming from genocide.
Oh, right.
So many Rwandese, they were not living their house. So we have where we live, and my dad was trying to do some jobs.
Okay.
But 98, still there was attack our people in the camp, border to Rwanda and Congo. That's when my dad decided to go far away
To
save
Kenya.
our life.
To
Yeah.
Kenya, right? And that's a connection we have with the Kenyan church there,
Yes.
right? So think back to that time, refugee, Rwanda, coming to Kenya. What was as you look back from where you are now, what was one way that God blessed you? Connected you with someone, opened a door, gave you an opportunity? How did God get you from there to here?
Okay, when you are a refugee, the UNHCR, they give you document to live. So they give mandate to live in Kenya. But I don't know how they do because I was not 18. My dad was the one who was doing everything. But we end up getting resettlement to come to US. But my Uncle Justin was living here. That's how my dad said his brother lives here. and then they sent us here. But before that, David knew Justin here, and then they came to visit us in Kenya, 2010. And I said in my heart, if we go to U.S., St. Louis, I'll be fellowship to David's church. That's how I came to this church.
That's good. Thank you. You can go. He's a refugee in Kenya. David happens to visit in 2010 and meet him. His dad's brother happens to be here in St. Louis. Just happens to be. God is good. So here are a couple ways that you can reflect this week, and it's just built on what we said a moment ago. So you know that a new day will come. We're moving toward Easter. So in Lent, you're there. This is adults. This is your script. Where you are in your story, and you can think about where you are. You can think about where you are. And what's one faithful step I can take this Lent? You know, not big plan stuff. Trusting that God is going to meet you there. His pre-kindness is going before you. Secondly, how can I love or serve someone who needs it this Lent? When you come across somebody, maybe God's going to put someone in your path. Keep your eyes and ears open. And the third is, how will I trust God's pre-kindness, unlooked for blessings this Lent? How do you need to trust God that He is going to meet you, knowing that His pre-kindness goes before you? And so you can be doing that now. You can be writing and drawing if you want to now as we continue with the service the last few minutes. We're going to worship a little bit. We'll have communion. And so just using that to reflect. Here's where I am now. Trusting in God's good new day. What's the next faithful step? How can I love or serve someone? How can I trust God's pre-kindness? Worship team, you guys can come up. We're going to lead into a time of communion. Servers can come on up too. And I want to start with this community prayer. If you haven't been here for communion, as a church and as a denomination, we invite anybody who has said yes to Jesus to take communion with us, whether you're a member of this church or part of this church or another church, or you haven't been to church in like 50 years. If you've said yes to Jesus, this meal is for you. And of course, don't feel pressure to come down. There's no pressure here. If that's not you, you can just stay in your seat. Nobody's going to notice. But you'll come down, you'll take both of the elements and keep the elements and go back to your seat, and then you hold them, don't take the elements, we'll take them together, okay? That's practically how we do it. So we're going to start with this community prayer, and this is from Charles Spurgeon's devotion that I didn't read further, but this is his prayer. So let's read this together. God, you are very good to those who trust in you. You often surprise us with unlooked for blessings. Chance is banished from our faith, for we see your hand in everything. O Lord, deal graciously with us as you did to Ruth. O Spirit of God, guide us to Jesus, our Kinsman Redeemer. We would rather glean the leftovers from his field than collect the entire harvest from another.